Hero FinCorp presents Young Turks, 14 years.
The other big ticket item that was announced by the Prime Minister as part of the Startup India plan, dealing with tax ops and tax exemptions, fiscal incentives. How meaningful will these exemptions, these incentives really be on the ground for the startup ecosystem?
Well, they're not very meaningful because the capital gains does not go the distance that is wanted. What we wanted was, please treat the capital gains on exits of startups in the same manner you treat any sale of stock in the capital markets after 1 year. In the capital markets, you have 1 year, you pay STT. In the startup, maybe 3 to 5 years. If you exit after 3 years, which is long term, then you don't pay any capital gains, you pay STT. That will make it very simple. And the exits could be by angels, exit could be by funds registered by SEBI. So you restrict it and you have a class of people. And for angels, you could come with a definition and some kind of registration, and that will work. I think that's the right way to do it. Right now, saying that you can invest in a fund of funds and you will get some kind of exemption if you do in MSME. I mean, these don't go the distance. These are very small points. And as for the tax holiday, 3 years, now they clarified 3 out of 5 years. Most startups won't make profit in the first 3 years. Neither in the 5 years they could make profit because they're spending for growth. So I think it'll have a little impact. But the bigger thing is, if you exempt them for 3 to 5 years, you go away from the harassment of the tax authorities. Please remember, smaller companies get harassed very much by tax authorities, calling them for assessment, giving them notices. So something like this will go to mitigate this harassment. Even though we have the CPC, we have much risk-based assessment and all that, still they will go after them. One important issue for which there is no clarification is valuation above fair market value or whatever they define for angels. They said it will be given for venture capital and they will be given for incubators, but we want it for angels. At the start of the startup is the angels who provide finance, and they have to value. Now, we don't want the taxman to come and say, this is not the value, I'm going to tax it, and I think that has to be clarified.
Well, Sharad, again, as Mohan was pointing out, we do need to see the fine print, and a lot of these measures will probably be rolled out when the Finance Minister presents the budget this year. But be that as it may, do you believe that this has enough meat in it to actually effect some sort of meaningful change?
Man, they're useless, in my opinion. I mean, we can put a lipstick on them and make them sound nice, but they're practically useless, right? The fact of the matter is that, at this point in time, the crisis that we have is that any startup that has any semblance of success, and therefore they're able to raise angel money or any kind of VC money, or they have an M&A opportunity in the future, in their view, they are, they could be an acquisition target in the future. They run into so many problems that they escape from the India jurisdiction and go away to Singapore and US, right? So our first is to stop this exodus, and to stop this exodus, we don't need SOPs, we don't need incentives. We need to resolve the hygiene factors that are there. And those are those 34 hygiene factors, that are part of the Stay in India checklist and that need to be addressed. All these SOPs are completely useless at this point in time.
Before we talk about what the government will do by way of incentives and SOPs and so on and so forth, Mohan, let's talk about the difference between announcements being made or intent and the reality on the ground. And let me pick up on one specific example. A lot of the startups that were being celebrated on stage with the Prime Minister are from the e-commerce sector. The e-commerce sector has been mired in controversy. Despite months of interministerial consultation, we still have no clarity on removing the ambiguity over foreign direct investment into that sector. A lot of these companies are now being investigated by the Enforcement Directorate. So there's a large gap between intent and ground reality. Are you feeling any more confident of being able to bridge that?
I totally agree with you, Shereen, because the entire e-commerce has been an exercise in regulatory futility because they're not given a proper definition. There's a lobby at work of small traders who don't want these people. I think that what the government is doing is to have a holding on action till there's a transformation. The e-commerce becomes so big that the opposition should disappear. So I think that's the only thing that can possibly happen. ED is investigating, they're trying to find out what is wrong. I hope it all dies down. But I think it's time the government took a stand and said, as far as marketplaces are concerned, anybody can set up a marketplace because it's got nothing to do with e-retail. And as far as retail is concerned, have a small list to protect small traders. The rest of it, I think, just open up. Because you've got such a variety of e-commerce marketplaces today, linking of small retail, linking of hyper-local, all kind of stuffs have come, and the government is unaware of the kind of companies that have come. I think I would request Mr. Amitabh Kant to call everybody, sit down and look at all the items there, in a month clarify, this is yeah, this is no, at least reduce the uncertainty to maybe 20-30% and eliminate it after a few months.
You know, Sharad, Mohan, I know that a lot of you put together this sort of hygiene list of what the government should look at and should address to make sure that companies don't actually relocate out of India. The stay in India checklist, as you call it. How much of that checklist has been delivered upon by the government as part of the Startup India plan? Do you believe that this relocation process, this exodus that you talk about, could perhaps be stemmed here?
No, not yet. I mean, we know from our internal interactions with them, and we've been, since October 23rd, when, in a sense, Mr. Amitabh Kant and DIPP adopted the Stay in India checklist, to November 19th, when we had a meeting with the PMO, and then subsequently 24 meetings that have taken place with various, secretaries and joint secretaries. Our assessment is that 60% of the issues are on a path to resolution, right? And the resolution may take all the way till the budget to get there. Now, that takes us to roughly about 21 items out of 34. Now, the remaining ones, we have a stalemate. We have to resolve them, right? And they are important issues that don't have a path to resolution. Now, however, out of even those 20 to 23 items that have a path to resolution, very few of them, in fact, only 2 of them made it to the action plan, which is to start a company more easily and to shut down a company easily, right? And rest of them didn't make it to the action plan because the nitty-gritty were not tied up, right? But, we know from these internal interactions that there is a glide path to closure, and maybe it will take a few more weeks to get there. And hopefully now the budget will be the forcing function to make that happen. So I think, Mohan and I wrote a opinion piece in the run-up to this announcement. I think it was on Friday or maybe Thursday. And in which we said doing 60% is not good enough, right? Because even if you have these irritants, that 40% irritants, they will still force the exodus to happen. So the government has to make up its mind that this is, they have to resolve all of them. And that is really where our focus has to be. Not do a 60% job, but do a 100% job. And that requires some more effort. And if we are able to do that, then I think we'll have a good outcome. Otherwise, it will be just chalta hai kind of an outcome for which results will not show.
Well, let me talk to you about one of the other areas which is sort of, seen a bit of controversy, and that is the government's decision to fund startups. A fund of funds, an aspiration fund was set up by the government in the last budget, and now they want to leverage that fund to be able to invest even further in the Indian startup ecosystem. The question is, should the government at all be in the business of funding startups?
Shereen, let us understand one thing, Shereen. At the seed level, there is not enough capital pending. You go to the Let's Venture portal, there are 6,000 companies asking for seed capital. It's not available. At the lower level, it's not available at all. Let's be clear. People who are making grandstands, they don't understand. Out of 5,000 companies, only 1,000 got funded. It's a great dearth of funding because the big funds coming from outside want to look at slightly bigger companies. There are a few companies. Indian capital is only 5%. In China, it's 60%. So we need a vibrant system to kickstart that. I support this fund of funds. I've gone to government and asked them to do it. The India Aspiration Fund now is a RIDF fund, is borrowing. So government has to give equity, and through this 10,000 crores for 7 years, you can catalyze 1 lakh crore. And 2,500 crores a year on a 17 lakh crore budget is no big deal. It's a development fund. And the government is like a credit guarantee fund which the government is putting for MSMEs in a very large way. There's a 3,000 crore credit guarantee fund for the Mudra Bank which government will give every year. So what's the big deal about 2,500? All the people who criticize are not getting the details. They don't understand the ground reality. I see 4 companies a day asking me for seed. There's so much of dearth of seed capital. And we're not going to lose this money. This fund is going to invest in other funds. They have to raise 85% more money or maybe 90% more money. So it's the best catalyst that can happen, the best force multiplier that can happen. I think the most fantastic thing the government has done, and I must compliment the government for going out of the way. Treat it like a credit guarantee fund or something like that, with the money coming back with very low risk. I think it's fantastic. the message going out to startups is, guys, focus on the fundamentals of business. Don't throw up money. There is no big daddy funding you. Even Masa may not fund you. That kind of money that's required.
Hero FinCorp presents Young Turks 14 Years.